Stay tuned as we go inside the walls of the Kentucky Correctional Institution for Women, where these 7 women are serving a life sentence. Murder, money, jealousy, all play a part in the sentences these women have been handed. Share your opinions by dropping a comment, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss part 2 of women serving life sentences in the state of Kentucky. On May 12, 2004, the dead body of Edgar Perkins was discovered lying face down in his dining room. His pockets were turned inside out and his empty wallet was found nearby. Perkins's brother testified that Perkins had won a considerable amount of money betting on the Kentucky Derby. An autopsy revealed that Mr. Perkins died of asphyxiation as a result of strangulation. The autopsy also revealed Mr. Perkins sustained cracked ribs and head trauma. 2 people became prime suspects in the murder, Loretta Evans and her roommate, Evelyn Ball. Loretta turned herself into authorities and provided her version of the events leading to Perkins' murder. Loretta said she and Evelyn went to Mr. Perkins' house on May 11, 2004. The 3 drank beer and smoked cigarettes. While Loretta was distracted, she said Evelyn and Mr. Perkins got into an argument over something he said. Loretta further explained that Evelyn became enraged and hit Mr. Perkins in the head with a wine bottle. She then choked Perkins, wrestled him to the floor, and killed him. Afterwards, the 2 women left the home in Loretta's vehicle. At trial, one of Perkins's neighbors testified that she saw a car matching the description of Loretta's car on the day of the murder. On June 14, 2004, Loretta and Evelyn were indicted by the Whitley County Grand Jury for the murder and robbery of Edgar Perkins. Loretta testified at trial in order to avoid the death penalty in an agreement with the Commonwealth. Loretta testified consistently with the statement she gave the police. Evelyn produced an alibi witness who testified that she was with her on the day of the murder. Evelyn was acquitted on all charges. Loretta was found guilty of first-degree robbery and murder as the principal in killing Mr. Perkins. She was sentenced to life imprisonment on the murder conviction and 20 years on the robbery conviction, sentences to run concurrently. Stephanie Fleming and her lover, James Ray Maggard, met while working at McDonald's in Whitesburg, Kentucky, where the 2 began conspiring to murder Stephanie's husband. Drad and Stephanie Fleming were separated for a while in 2012, but at the time of Mr. Fleming's disappearance, the couple were living together with their 2 sons, both under the age of 5, in a mobile home in the community of Apex. Stephanie masterminded a plan which started by convincing her husband to increase the amount of his life insurance policy about a month before his death. Drad Fleming went missing on the night of June 20, 2012, sometime after he was last seen looking for a place to park in Neon so he could attend visitation for an uncle who had been killed in an all-terrain vehicle accident. Authorities have said Mr. Fleming, a roof-bolting machine operator for Cumberland River Coal Company, left before attending the wake after being lured by his wife back to the couple's trailer so that Maggard could ambush him with a baseball bat. After searching for Mr. Fleming in and around the areas thought to be pertinent, deputies met with members of the Fleming's family to talk about where Fleming might be. Stephanie Fleming eventually told authorities she had gotten a call from her husband saying he was driving to meet a person on Pine Mountain when she last heard from him. While family members and deputies continued their ground search, James Maggard walked into the sheriff's office in Whitesburg and confessed to killing Mr. Fleming. Maggard then rode in a car with 2 deputies to show them where the truck had come to rest, down an embankment along Franks Creek Road. In Eolia video surveillance, taken from a coal mine near Little Fork of Franks Creek, shows Fleming's truck driving by the mine site at a high rate of speed at 10:15 p.m. on the night of the murder. The recording also shows Maggard walking back down the same road 1 hour and 37 minutes later. An autopsy performed the day after the remains of Mr. Fleming were recovered revealed that he died of smoke inhalation and thermal injuries. The report said that Mr. Fleming's lungs, larynx, and trachea contained abundant amounts of soot. State Medical Examiner Victoria Graham also said that blunt force trauma cannot be excluded by autopsy findings. Stephanie entered a guilty plea on numerous charges for her role in her husband's death on March 5, 2014. She was sentenced to life in prison with the chance of parole after serving 20 years. Later that same month, Maggard entered an Alford guilty plea in Letcher Circuit Court that protected him from the death penalty. He was sentenced to life without the possibility of probation or parole. Cheryl Gabow and her domestic companion, David Brangers, hired James Cecil and Samuel McMillan to kill Gabow's husband, Frederick Gabow. On February 17, 1995, McMillan shot and killed Frederick Gabow at Mr. Gabow's residence in Radcliffe, Kentucky. Cheryl and Frederick Gabow were in the process of a divorce, and Cheryl believed that if her husband died before the divorce became final on February 20, 1995, she could collect the proceeds of his $200,000 National Guard life insurance policy. Cheryl Gabow agreed to pay Cecil and McMillan $10,000 of the life insurance proceeds to kill Frederick Gabow. On the night of February 17, 1995, local police officers came to the Brangers-Gabow residence and advised that Frederick Gabow had been shot and was at the hospital. On February 18th, Cecil and McMillan came to the Brangers-Gabow residence and described how McMillan had shot Frederick Gabow through a window of his residence, then entered the residence and shot him again. According to Brangers, Cheryl was upset that her husband was still alive because he was not supposed to suffer. Mr. Gabow died the next day. McMillan, Cecil, Brangers, and Cheryl Gabow all confessed to their respective involvements in the killing, and all were indicted for murder. Prior to trial, Brangers was allowed to plead guilty to criminal facilitation of murder and to accept a sentence of 5 years in prison in exchange for his testimony against the others. The charge against McMillan was severed when a question arose as to his mental competency to stand trial. In her confession, Cheryl Gabow admitted hiring Cecil and McMillan to kill her husband so that she could collect the life insurance proceeds. However, she also claimed that several days before the murder, she advised both Cecil and McMillan that she didn't want it to happen, that she didn't want them to do anything, and that she did not see Cecil again until the day after the murder. Later in her confession, she claimed to have had a subsequent conversation only with Cecil, in which she repeated her renunciation and in which Cecil also renounced any further interest in the plot. Cecil's confession does not mention a renunciation either by himself or by Cheryl Gabow. His version of this conversation was that he told Cheryl that McMillan had gotten drunk and disappeared with the gun. That Cheryl told him that it needed to be done before Monday because she was going to sign the divorce papers on Monday or Tuesday, and that Cecil promised her it would be done before Monday. James Cecil and Cheryl Gabow were then tried jointly, and both were convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison without benefit of probation or parole for 25 years. James Cecil was paroled on February 3, 2020. Cheryl remains at the Kentucky Correctional Institution for Women. Brenda Harden and her husband Ronnie Harden were married in 1971. They have a son and 2 grandsons. In January of 2012, Ronnie left Brenda. Her mental and physical health deteriorated thereafter. She suffered from depression and attempted to take her own life in 2013. Brenda and Ronnie divorced in July of 2013. Brenda's mental health continued to decline. After the divorce, Ronnie maintained a golf shop in a detached building on the property where the couple once lived. Ronnie continued to use the shop for golf lessons and other work. Ronnie became engaged to Betty Rule. Brenda became aware of the engagement before the wedding date. She became obsessed with the prospect of Ronnie's new marriage. Ronnie and Brenda's son cautioned his father to avoid Brenda due to her volatile state. On July 7, 2014, Ronnie ignored his son's warnings and returned to his marital residence to use the golf shop. That evening, Brenda killed Ronnie with a single shot to his upper torso that was fired from a .357 revolver. Brenda tried to take her life by swallowing a copious amount of prescription medications, but still managed to drive herself to her sister's house, who quickly called 911. Brenda spent several days in ICU. During her stay at the hospital, she was indicted for murder and tampering with physical evidence. When she recovered, she was booked into the Muhlenberg County Jail. Brenda was tried and convicted of murder. She was sentenced to life imprisonment. She is currently at the Kentucky Correctional Institution for Women. Ramona Haynes was arrested shortly after the body of her 67-year-old mother was found in a shallow grave in April of 1995. Haynes's body was found about 4 to 5 miles from her home, police said. Her 85-year-old brother, Buvell Smith, of Irvington, said he and a niece went to check on Haynes after she failed to answer their telephone calls Monday morning. When they reached her house at the end of an old county road at 9 a.m. CDT, her red pickup was there. On a chair by her front door, they found her glasses, broken, her tennis shoes, and a surgical glove. It is unclear if Ramona pled guilty or was convicted in the murder of her mother. However, she remains incarcerated at the Kentucky Correctional Institution for Women, where she's been serving a life sentence since January 11, 1996. She had a parole hearing in February of 2020, which was deferred for 120 months. Shayna Hubers was in an on-again, off-again relationship with Ryan Poston when Shayna fatally shot Poston in October of 2012 to death in his own home. Shayna claimed she shot Ryan in self-defense when she called 911 after he threw her across the room and into a bookshelf. She also claimed that Poston was abusive. At the crime scene, police found no signs of violence. Authorities believed the pair got into an argument when Hubers shot Poston 6 times. Friends of Ryan said that he was going to end their on-again, off-again relationship and had a date with Miss Ohio USA, Audrey Bolte, on the night of the murder. During her police interview, Hubers displayed bizarre behavior. She spoke to authorities for almost 3 hours, danced, twirled, and sang Amazing Grace. She was eventually charged with murder. She was convicted 2.5 years later. After her first conviction, Hubers received a 40-year prison sentence. That conviction was overturned after it was revealed a jury member had a prior felony conviction. A retrial took place in August 2018. Once again, Shayna was convicted of murder, receiving a life sentence with parole after 20 years. Shane will be eligible for parole after 14 years, as she already served 6 years in prison at the time of her sentencing. In June of 2018, while in the Campbell County Jail, Shayna married a transgender woman named Unique Taylor, previously known as Richard McBee. The marriage didn't last long. In January 2019, Hubers filed for divorce from Taylor. Court records showed that their relationship became irretrievably broken. Police said Lorena's son Anthony drove his mother both to and away from the scene where Calvin Taylor was shot and killed in 2020 at a house on North Kentucky Avenue. Anthony entered an Alford plea to facilitation to complicity to commit murder and first-degree facilitation to complicity to commit robbery. An Alford plea means the younger Manning did not admit guilt, but did recognize there was enough evidence to convict him. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison in exchange for his testimony. Anthony's story wavered a bit from the original statement he gave police, but that didn't stop the jury from finding his mother guilty of complicity to murder and complicity to first-degree robbery following the 4-day trial in Christian County Circuit Court. The jury took just over 2 hours to find Lorena guilty. She was sentenced to life for complicity to murder and 20 years for first-degree robbery, to run concurrently. She will be eligible for parole after serving at least 20 years of that life sentence.